Hello, good evening. We're here to talk about the out-of-school settings safeguarding open call for evidence. Sounds like a mouthful, doesn't it? This is about the government wanting to look at out-of-school settings. Now, you might not be aware what an out-of-school setting is. So to give you an idea, it's a massive group of settings, everything from your daughter's dance class to the scout group to Sunday school, the local yeshiva. Many things can come under an out-of-school settings basis. In the past, out-of-school settings have always been referred to as places where children are left. But this particular call for evidence actually talks about settings as well where parents stay. They're trying to capture as many of these settings as possible, basically.
It's also everything's in relation to school these days.
Yes, it is. Everything's in relation to school, which is very annoying. Yeah, this is we consider this to be the sneaky government way of supposedly engaging with the great unwashed like you and me on regulation that they intend to bring in. Now, if they bring in some of the kinds of regulations that they're talking about in this particular call for evidence, they will destroy many out-of-school settings that we currently enjoy using. And that might be your local home ed group. So this is why it's really important to have a look at this. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we shall crack on. Is that all right, Julia?
Yes, and the reason we should have done this a lot earlier, but we've been somewhat distracted, I must say. But the deadline is 21st of August.
Yes,
so it's only 6 days to go from tonight, Wednesday, which is the 15th of August, not a lot of time. So please, if you can have this video on hand and be doing the consultation at the same time, that to help you understand it, whatever it takes for you to do it.
Okay. If you Google out of school settings call for evidence or consultation or something like that, this is the page you will be led to. It's a government website page from the Department of Education. And you'll see that this was first put up on the 29th of May this year. You need to pop down here. It tells you all about what it's about.
And it actually tells you all the settings there. Just all the
absolutely.
Examples.
So supplementary schools, tuition centres, uniformed youth organisations, holiday camps, etc. Okay. So the way to get to the actual consultation is, it says this call for evidence is being held on another website. So in this big blue box, so you click on another website and it will take you to a further page, which is in the consultation section of the Department for Education's website. Now you can pop down on here. Now this document here is possibly useful. I've just downloaded it, but some of the questions have changed since they produced that document. So we're just going to go through the online survey with you right now. Okay, so obviously it's for absolutely everybody to take part. That's what they say. It should be noted at this point that they have not produced an accessible version. So,
or a child-friendly version.
Exactly.
And it says it's for children.
Yeah, this is about children. And if I was a child, certainly if I was a child under the age of about 14, I'd be overwhelmed with this. Right, so there you go. Deadline closes on the 21st of August. So we're going to click into the survey. I'm going to try and make this a little bit bigger to make sure that everybody can see it. There we go. So safeguarding of children is critically important. What we've been discussing in the Alliance is that the government seems to forget that the primary safeguarders of children are their own parents and guardians. and everything that we've seen done to us, and I use those words advisedly, done to us, has tried to wedge the government in between us and our children. So this is where we need to keep that in mind when we're going through this. It says the evidence gained will be used to inform consideration of longer term proposals to further enhance the safety of the out of school settings sector and to instill parents and carers with confidence that they are choosing safe settings for their children. So really it's a step to regulate these settings. That's what they're trying to do. They're just simply trying to regulate these settings. Okay, so let's go further. Obviously, this is your normal questions about, are you responding as an individual or an organisation? If you run a home ed group, then you might click organisation. That would be very useful. In the past, bear in mind, in the past, the Department for Education have taken more notice of responses from organisations than they have from responses for individuals. So if you at all are involved in the running of something, it would be really useful if you can put organisation, because your response will be given greater weight. Okay, the normal religious, ethnic questions, you don't have to answer these ones, prefer not to say.
I tend to stick with the prefer not to say, just because I don't want everything put in a neat little box that conforms with perhaps some prejudice or bias.
And you have the option here to keep your responses confidential. So they have to do the confidentiality thing. It is the law that they offer the confidentiality thing. I'm not bothered. I quite like them to come back and ask me difficult questions. They never have, by the way. But you
and
know,
also if they're going to publish the responses, you know, if you do, would you be happy for that to be published?
yeah, I mean, it's not actually clear. Michelle, have you
No.
seen any detail of whether they're going to publish actual responses from people?
I haven't seen any detail, but I presume it would be like the normal consultations. If they get round to it, we will get to see them. But then if you think the last call for evidence, the last time they discussed drafting guidance, we've still not had the response for that out yet, or any of the publications. So they don't have to. That's the problem. But I'm sure we'll all FOI them if it looks like they're not going to publish them.
Yeah. Right. So they're acknowledging that these settings are a big part of most children's lives. 80% of 10 to 15-year-olds engage in at least one extracurricular activity. So we're talking about scouts and dance class here, generally speaking, your taekwondo club, the chess club, whatever it is. And they do refer to a few bits of reports, etc.
It says they've worked closely with the OOSS sector. I'm not sure, nobody I know has spoken to has heard of it. So
they've been very selective. I tried to get involved in some discussions with them, and they were extremely selective. And they've actually changed their definition of an out of school setting as well, because when I first started talking to them, they were telling me that they weren't bothered about parent-led home education groups, etc. Well, they are now in scope. So 3 years ago when I was talking to them, they weren't in scope. They're just trying to corral everything, really. This report here, this so-called independent report, that is a really interesting read. Don't waste your time on it now, but I'll give you a summary. Basically, they did a pilot program with about, I think it was 18 local authorities, something like that, where they tried to have the local authorities identify and talk to the out of school settings. And you know what? The engagement was absolutely non-existent, pretty much. Nobody wanted to bother talking to the local authority. They were all far too busy running their groups and clubs and things. And they were very disappointed that nobody was excited to deal with them. So, you know, even their own experiment has shown that the sector just do not want interference, and that's what this is about. It's about interference.
They're probably taking that as a signal for them to get to interfere more.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. I mean, you know, findings of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, which noted how out of school settings were not regulated. Now, this is the irony is that they always do this, don't they? They always say, oh, regulation will save people, regulation will do this. There are already laws about child sexual abuse. It's called abuse because it's wrong. And there are already laws out there to prosecute people who indulge in sexually abusing children. Why do we need another layer of regulation?
And putting in that extra layer of regulation is not going to deter someone. You know, I think most of this depends on parents becoming more involved and knowing where their children are, what they're doing, and keeping an eye on things.
Absolutely, 100%. So,
yeah, they talk about the organizations, what they may
That's right. So again, going through what they might be, whether it's you see, they say it specifically excludes schools, colleges, 16 to 19 academies, alternative provision arranged by local authorities or schools, and providers caring for children that are registered with Ofsted or a childminder agency.
Because we already know how safe they are, Alison. Do we not? There's not any problem at all in those settings, ever.
But the other side of it is that it shows they don't actually understand what an out of school setting is, because there are many out of school settings where there are 2 or 3 children there who are there as alternative provision arranged by the local authority, but the majority of the children at the out of school setting are there because the parents have paid for their children to be there. So that particular setting does meet the definition, but also doesn't meet the definition. It's explicitly excluded. But I presume they're not treating the alternative provision children different, like the staff are trained specially different for those particular children or segregated in some way. So they don't even understand the sector.
Yeah, it's an utter nonsense. And I think you got to remember that the sector is so broad, so wide, so varied. You know, you can have an out of school setting that has 2 children in it. You might have an out of school setting that has 400 children in it. It's you might have an out of school setting that's regulated by a national body. So if you've got a football club, or you've got Girl Guides, or you've got, you know, they come under these umbrellas and these systems, etc., that they already have. So to scoop them all together and to call them all the same thing just feels very wrong. And you'll notice as we go through this that the questions just, you would want, depending on what setting you're talking about, they're asking like a general question about, do you think our out of school setting should have X? And you'd want to say, well, if it was a one of these, yes, maybe. And if it was a one of those, then definitely not. So they're trying to put things into a group that really can't be put into a group.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, talking about Girl Guides, John's Ambulance, cadets,
all the different kinds of settings.
Yeah, Sunday schools, Jewish yeshivas, etc. Right. So, well, just a quick word on the a quick word on the word safeguarding. Safeguarding is a in its form that it's used these days is quite a modern term. We didn't used to talk about safeguarding. So safeguarding kind of is a preemptive act. It tries to prevent harm from happening. The problem is it's become a bit of an industry, and it's become a bit of a thing to bash parents and settings and all sorts with. We used to talk about welfare, but now really we just talk about safeguarding.
Sorry, Alison, I've just noticed, you know, in the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, where it talks about that lowered threshold for sharing data without consent. The threshold has in that bill is that they can share data without consent for the purposes of promoting the welfare of children. Now here we see the same wording, and to me it's like kind of like just putting an idea in people's heads about this lowered threshold, the sharing of data without consent, that these are things we should all be willing to do to promote
Yes.
the welfare of children.
Yes, it's
It
quite
just
a dangerous phrase, that, isn't it?
yeah.
So promoting the welfare of children can then be interpreted a myriad of ways because
Well,
it's
we
not
had
a
all the
neat
little do-good children's societies and whatnot back in the past that promoted the welfare of children by removing them from their parents and sending them to live in children's homes
institutions.
and
Yeah,
whatnot, and institutions that wreck their lives. So yeah, I do get very wary when I read that kind of wording.
yeah. Right. So, again, what capacity are you primarily responding? If I was going to do it for girl guiding, I would be a volunteer in an OOSS because I'm a guide leader. If I was running a group, like a home ed group, I could either be a volunteer or I could be a parent or carer of a child who uses one or an owner of one. There's all sorts of choices here. Some of them might not fit you, but there's another box, so you can say what you like in there. But I would recommend that you use one of their things here because, again, if you don't fit into their box for the type of person that's answering this, your views may not be counted.
They tend to weight them more heavily than if you're a parent.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, designated safeguarding lead. That is exactly what it says on the tin. So I'm the designated safeguarding lead in a couple of organisations. It's kind of an official title for, you know, if anything happens or if anybody's worried about anything, they come to you and you make a decision as to what happens next. So a designated safeguarding lead is kind of quite an important position, but many small organisations don't have one and they don't need one. Historically, they've never needed one because they talk about things, etc. So don't get too hung up in that. Local authority area. Remember, your local authority isn't necessarily the people that pick up the bins. Your local authority is whoever provides education in your part of the country.
Just to note on this, there is an option for other UK or other international, but you have to scroll right to the bottom. There's no prefer not to, but there is, if you don't want to say your local authority, there is an option for other UK or other international at the very, very bottom.
There you go. Other UK, other international. Okay. Right. What do you consider to be the main focus of the primary setting you are responding in relation to? Again, some of this just does not cover
Just
what
Alison, but just read the last line of that paragraph about your different capacities. This is worth noting.
So you can send more than one response in.
Mm.
You can send more than one response in if you
if you're with the Girl Guides, you could do one with the Girl Guides in mind. If you run a home ed provision or club or co-op or whatever, you could fill in another one, thinking that, bearing that one in mind.
Absolutely. So again, you can say that you are involved in other settings. That could even be childcare. You could be a childminder, for example, etc. Although childcare provision by childminders is Ofsted regulated, so they don't come in scope, do they, Michelle?
Sorry, I've just noticed something.
That's what I was saying about earlier. They don't know what they're talking about when they've set the rules. They've said these aren't in scope, but then have put them in scope.
I've just noticed so we've got question 9 where it talks about if you wish to respond in different capacities. And the next one says, apart from the primary organization you're responding in relation to, what is the focus of any other out of school setting you or your child are also involved with? It's just sort of weird that now they bring your child into it, but it is you or your child. But like the first question doesn't bring you or your child into it.
No, they've not thought it through at all.
No.
how many years have you worked with children in a setting? If you're responding as an individual, please select not applicable. That's a very simple question. What age are the children in the setting you use or are involved in or are responding on behalf of? You can, because it's checkboxes, you can tick all that apply. You don't have to just do one of those. Okay. So the government is committed to safeguarding all children. Yes. Over half of children attend some sort of setting. Now here's where it gets interesting. Unlike many other educational settings, out of school settings are not subject to mandatory regulation under education and childcare law. That's your hint. That's what they want to do. This means that there is no central register or required membership of a larger umbrella organisation and no required inspections or compulsory regular engagement with the local authority. That's what they're after. There are no mandatory qualifications or training for providers, staff and volunteers in order to operate or work in such a setting.
So what are they getting at?
Yep, exactly. DBS checks are not mandatory in the same way they would be in a school or college, etc. So have a think about this, because if you're running a really small setting or you're running a setting that's very cooperative, you might actually not need any of those things in order to operate safely. And if they brought in such regulation, you might find that your setting could no longer operate merely because it was too expensive or too burdensome to do so. So here they're acknowledging that out-of-school providers do have a common law duty of care to protect the safety and welfare of children that attend them. Well, of course they do. You know, harming children is actually an offence. So we already have laws in place to protect children. The safeguarding guidance for out-of-school settings, you might wish to go and have a look at that. It's overly wordy and bureaucratic. It's about as much use as a chocolate teapot. It's not very helpful at all. I don't know whether Michelle or Juliet are familiar with it, but I found it just a waste of words. So many providers are part of an association or umbrella organisation. Well, if you're running something that's completely independent, then that ain't going to happen, is it?
Yeah, or you've got something where all the parents are involved and on site, you know, where it's informal. If you had to suddenly have a lot of requirements and regulations to meet, it would become unwieldy and costly. You know, it's that kind of thing, is that you can't have, this is once again, you can't have a one size fits all.
Yeah, but here it says it's precisely because the sector is so diverse and often operates outside the oversight of local and national government that our evidence base is weaker than for schools and colleges, for instance.
It's they want a finger in every pie. They want to
They do, and
have a control in every sector.
If we had, if out of school settings were risky as a group, if they were considered to be risky, we would have reports in the news of children being harmed on a regular basis at out of school settings. But we don't have those reports. It's a bit like when they're coming after home educators and saying they have to check on their welfare and that they're not safe. And we go, well, how many home educated children do you actually find under the floorboards?
Yeah, and the fact is, what we do see stories about regularly about children being harmed is schools.
Absolutely. So those regulated settings with all these rules and bureaucracy, it doesn't actually make them any safer.
Yeah, and it actually makes a lie about this whole point, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So questions about your awareness and understanding of safeguarding in out of school settings. Parents are currently responsible for the decision on whether a setting is safe for their child. Did you know this?
I hope you did.
Yeah, I hope you did. Before receiving this call for evidence, were you aware that they're currently unregulated?
You
I
can
hope
say
you
you
do.
don't know. If you didn't
Yeah.
know that, you can say it, Yeah.
Before receiving this call for evidence, were you aware that although many do, they're not required to do DBS checks on their staff? Again, just be honest.
I
Now,
think a thing to add there as well is for people to be aware of, if the person owns the organisation, they may not be able to get their own DBS because of the way the DBS system is worded. So it may not be through not intending; they may just not be able to if there's literally just owners of the organisation.
so in this section here, question 16, what I've put in my notes is that this is a ridiculous question to ask. They've already admitted how diverse the settings are, and yet they're trying to ask you a question that covers all the settings. It's an impossibility. You might like to put in this box that DBS checks are not very readily available for individuals. They make the system very difficult to obtain DBS checks. You might want to put that that what's appropriate for the Scouts is not appropriate for the tiny little science club that you send your kid to. You know, something along those lines where you highlight the ridiculousness of what they are asking, I think is appropriate there. Number 17, if you had a concern about safeguarding standards within a setting, where would you go to report that issue? Again, you're supposed to check all of the ones that are appropriate. The one that's missing here is parents. There is no option to check parents. So, you know, if you had a concern about safeguarding standards, I think if you went to a dance class and you were a bit worried that they were doing some dangerous moves or the floor was slippery or there was a dodgy person in there, the first thing you'd probably do is talk to all the other mums, surely.
Yeah.
You know? And then between you, you'd decide what to do. And it would depend on the type of setting as to what you would do. I think the very last place you would go would be the school of the affected child. I can't even imagine why you would tell a school about a dodgy dance class. You know? But there we go. For goodness sake, don't put I wouldn't report the issue. But yes, it's kind of up to you what you say there, but we would like you to put you forgot parents or parents in the other box there. Which of the following are your primary sources of information on safeguarding? Select up to 3. Well, again, you know, I would hope that if you've sent your child to a dance class or a home education group, that you have talked to other parents.
Yeah, I am going to put in here that in terms of the parents being informed and so on, that unless the parents are the potential source or the alleged source of safeguarding issues. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sector specific organisations. Obviously, I mean, if you're joining a uniform organisation like St John's Ambulance or something like that, then they are going to have their own safeguarding rules, etc. And that would be your source of information. But also the setting itself. Surely you would talk to the setting itself, you know? When I accept children into my Girl Guides, I always talk to their parents. And we talk about safety and inclusion and all of those things. It's part of my Welcome to Girl Guiding chat. And I would hope that in any setting that you go to, that you at least get some personal attention from the people that are running the setting. Government action on safeguarding. So this is this 3 million pilot programme that we were talking about, where they were testing these approaches for identifying, mapping and taking action. They're saying they're testing approaches for identifying risks, but the sector was risky. There would have been an outcry already from parents because various things would have happened. When danger happens on a mass scale, You see it in the news. This is not happening here. They're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Well, I think we need to also as parents, we need to be really encouraging other parents to be involved in I think what the problem can be is parents who just want to drop off their children because it's like a convenient form of childcare, and they are not being actively involved in making sure these are safe environments for their children. And I think we need to really be encouraging parents to step up in this regard, because unfortunately these are the problems that the government thinks that they need to address, is where you do have parents who are not doing adequate checks themselves on the environments their children are in. And so we do need to face that there can be situations that arise. And if we want the government to take parents seriously, then we need to make sure we as parents are being active and responsible and proactive in our children's lives and these decisions.
Yeah, I agree. The guidance for parents and carers, by the way, that's mentioned here is quite interesting, and that does have some hints and tips about how you can look and see whether an organisation is safe or a setting is safe. That's not too bad, that bit. We were talking about the e-learning, weren't we, Michelle?
Yeah, no, because I have done some bits when I see them come up on e-learning, just because I do them out of interest to just see what's being advised currently for safeguarding bits. And there's no reason why we couldn't create our own e-learning modules, but is it really needed?
I don't think so. Right, so government action on wider safeguarding. Obviously, the child sexual abuse scandals that have happened over the past few years are absolutely awful. But again, people knew about them and they didn't do their job. We're back to the Sarah Sharif scenario where everybody knew about it and they didn't do their job. She was on multiple lists, people knew she was at risk, and nobody did anything about it. Being on a list does not save you from harm.
But also, specifically with this one, it gets worse, because actually the report itself was the fact that the children had all spoken out and no one listened to them. Well, adding a lot of regulation is not going to make someone listen who has not listened already. And the recommendations were very clear. People need to listen to children when they are concerned. They need to observe and notice children, and staff need to be trained to know what to do. None of those require regulation. They're all things that any organisation could put in place tomorrow. Tell everyone here, you must listen and you must observe, and that they were the key recommendations. And this is not taking on board the key recommendations.
It says here, working together to safeguard children, which is a document that's been around for a while, and it gets an update every so often. Got an update in 2023. So it says this means out of school settings should be aware that they could be legally required to collaborate with local safeguarding partners. I don't know what that's about. Is that if there's an issue? This bit's very badly worded, by the way. I think what this is referring to is that if something happens, then they'll have to collaborate. That's the only time they would be legally required to collaborate with local safeguarding partners, would be if an incident had happened whilst under their care. So if something happens to little Johnny, who happens to go to your taekwondo school, you can't be legally required to go to the child protection meetings, and in fact you would probably be banned from them anyway because of confidentiality. So none of that makes much sense. Number 19, are you already aware of either the existing government guidance or the explanatory safeguarding posters and leaflet? You probably aren't. To what extent do you agree or disagree that the existing government guidance is helpful? So do feel free to have a quick look at it. That was on the previous page. I pointed it out. Have a quick look and see whether you agree that it's helpful. Are the safeguarding posters and leaflet helpful? I've not seen posters or a leaflet.
Yeah, I don't know that I have.
And when it says more information, it doesn't give you a link to them. So you can't go and look at them and have an answer. That was clever, wasn't it? So you probably don't know. Which, if any, of the following could improve the guidance and resources for providers of parents and carers? So anything that you want to put in there. Something that Michelle and I are always banging on about is things like tables, checklists and templates and flowcharts and things like that, things that explain things much better. The issue is, though, as we discovered one day when I was in a meeting with some other people looking at the schools bill, we tried to put a flowchart together, but because it was so badly written, it was an impossible flowchart with many dead ends.
Yep.
So them putting flowcharts in might actually make them write the stuff better. So I'm very much in favour of that. But if you want to put more than one thing, then you can always click other and then make a list.
Well, one of the suggestions was, why don't maybe we suggest that they put a chat bot on the government websites that parents can go and just go and maybe they would like that answer if it involves AI in some way, because that's the way they're leaning.
So there you go, an AI chatbot on the DFB website, for example. Sharing information. This is the big dangerous one that so what, if anything, do you think prevents parents and carers from easily accessing safeguarding information, such as a safeguarding policy or process? Well, some settings don't have safeguarding policies or processes. And for some settings, it's not appropriate for them to necessarily have those things, especially if they are a collaborative environment or that's very, very small.
I think I will answer this one. I disagree. Parents, carers find it easy to find relevant safeguarding information because I think if parents do need it, it is accessible online. Maybe there are some parents who don't know where to look, but it should be our job to go and to know how to look or know where to find the information.
Yeah, so this is your opportunity to show that you're a responsible parent by saying that you do go and check. Yeah. So 24, which of the following does the setting share with parents and carers? Again, this is a dangerous question because they're expecting people to have websites and locations where they can display this information. They might not have websites and notice boards.
Is it required by law for them to display it?
Well, I'm just thinking of the little forest schools that literally there is nowhere to display something. And would normally operate on word of mouth. You get a recommendation off a parent whose child already goes there, because they normally only have about 8-9 places anyway. So you go on word of mouth recommendations. There is no website, and where are you sticking it? You going and hanging it off a tree?
No clue. So you might want to put a little bit of an essay in the bottom of there and say, again, this is such a diverse sector. What's suitable for one is not suitable for another.
They're asking you to respond about your specific setting that you have in mind. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
If it is a forest school or something like that, you might want to write something and say that it's inappropriate. So don't just feel that you have to be restricted to their checkbox there. If you think that it's important that they know why that stuff is not readily available or why it's not needed, then do feel free to elaborate. Based on your experience, how do you think settings should inform parents and carers of safeguarding arrangements in their setting? Again, depends on the setting, doesn't it? So this is general. This is not about your specific setting now. So you can put a lot of general comments in the bottom about it depends what the setting is. I mean, you can tick as many of these as you like. So, I would always discuss safeguarding arrangements on request. So yes, so you can check more than one and do feel free to sort of elaborate a little bit underneath. Okay, we're getting there. We're on page 12 of 18, so we are getting there. Number 26, thinking about the primary setting that you're responding in relation to. Are they members or affiliates of any of the following accreditation things? So yeah.
Can I just go back quickly, sorry, to the previous question 24. I just had a thought. So if I was talking about my home ed group where the parents are involved, I might say that small informal settings that have parental involvement may not find it necessary to display this information as the decisions are discussed and reached by consensus. So you
Right,
can.
could you just repeat that again, Julia?
So small informal settings that have parental involvement may not find it necessary to display this information as the decisions are discussed and reached by consensus. So you're basically saying the parents have discussed it amongst themselves. They all know what's going on. They've all been part of it. So you could put that, if it's a home ed group where the parents are all involved. So you don't always have to have the signage and those sorts of things.
That's a really good, well-worded answer. Okay, this is blindingly obvious because, you'll probably know if they're and interestingly, they haven't got accreditation scheme or membership bodies. They haven't got everything down here. So I don't know what you'd put. Girl guiding doesn't go under any of those. So I just have to put other and then Girl Guiding UK. If the setting is not a member or an affiliate of a scheme, why do you think that is? It might well be the kinds of settings that Juliet was talking about. There isn't an appropriate scheme, and you might want to write. Feel free always to write a bit of text if there's the opportunity to do so, even if you haven't checked the other box. Safety in educational settings. Oh, the delightful prevent. So prevent is the thing about radicalisation. It's been I don't. Are there any positives from prevent, Michelle? I haven't seen any positives. I've only seen negatives so far.
Yes, it does seem to end up with a significant amount of referrals that shouldn't really happen, that are actually based on people's bias, based on people's racism, and based on people's ableism. So the latest statistics I heard about show that whereas it was previously quite clearly a racist bias, we're now having quite a big bias of individuals with autism being referred to the prevent programs just because people don't understand the normal characteristics of autistic people. So, in theory, it's a good plan, but the execution has not met up to the theory that prevent was supposed to provide.
And the chap responsible for the Southport thing, he had been referred to prevent, but he'd been discounted as being a risk because of his racial background or something, something along those lines. They'd sort of profiled him ethnically or religiously or both and said, oh, he's not a risk, he doesn't tick our red flag criteria. And he should have been referred to prevent, and they should have taken action. So it's a scheme that just doesn't really work at all.
But the interesting thing, so this is talking about how the government provides guidance and advice to all education settings, including OOS. So this is also including schools. But what this section is, it's talking about safety in educational settings, but very specifically to do with almost like acts of terrorism, that kind of thing. These points they make here. And what I have a problem with is it's almost normalizing them. We're saying, oh, you need these measures in place because, well, these things are going to happen. So you better have a plan. A little bit of that. I kind of feel like I need to, push back a bit about, why are we taking this approach rather than looking at having more greater police presence on the streets so that there's less opportunity for people to run around and do nasty things to kids.
But it's also, this protect and prepare stuff that they have, which is, they're teaching children to go and hide in cupboards and things like that. If somebody dangerous comes into the school or whatever, the chances of that happening are, I mean, first of all, we don't live in America. So, we don't have mass school shootings and things like that. It's very, very rare for anything like that to happen. And the balance is the wrong way, isn't it? I mean, I think we're potentially damaging a lot of children by making them terrified that these things are inevitable rather than letting them live happy childhoods. I think I was saying earlier, wasn't I, that a lot of my friends of my age, and I'm in my mid-50s, a lot of friends my age saw a lot of the Cold War stuff on the television. We used to have a lot of public service films, And they were films about, you know, this is the warning, the early warning sign. You will have 3 minutes to prepare yourself after this sign. You know, if this indicates there will be a nuclear attack, you must go and do this and do that. And I have friends who still have nightmares from that. So, and this is the same thing. They're actually physically making these children go run through these drills. And I think they're really dangerous. So
I think it can cause other kind of harm. You know, so
and again, it's not factoring in how broad this sector is, because again, that little club that has 4 or 5 children is very different in what they'd need to do, because let's be honest, she could pretty much just take the hands of everyone and leave in the relevant direction, compared to the group that, like a residential, where the children are away for a week and staying in different accommodations, and so you would need a proper plan. It doesn't seem to sort of remember that this sector it cannot be just put in these tiny little boxes, because it's so different.
Yeah, so this section is basically all about, you know, what is your plan in the event of something bad happening in the setting. And yeah, I have difficulty with this, I've got to admit.
Yeah. Just a note, evacuation, that's basically hiding in cupboards. Evacuation is moving outside. Evacuation is hiding.
I have no problem with teaching children common sense approaches to different situations, that scary situations, because they will possibly encounter these things at some point. But I think it's just finding that balance and involving parents in those conversations as well, because parents need to maybe mitigate if these children are having nightmares about this. You know, you need that parental involvement, which sometimes doesn't happen. So the parents often only find out about it later on.
Exactly. Michelle was saying earlier, the first thing their parents know about them doing these things is when their children come home a bit traumatized having done them. Okay. You might not know whether, I mean, you have a process for referring children vulnerable to radicalisation or extremism to further support from the local authority. Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, you know, if I came across a child in everyday life, regardless of whether they were at a setting that I was operating, who seemed to be being radicalised, my call would be to social services, actually, and let them deal with it. You know? Have you access training on safeguarding children from radicalisation or extremism in this? Now, I mean, that only applies if you're running the damn thing. That's just not so not applicable if you're not running it. Do you have any other concerns or have identified any gaps in the support or guidance with regards to keeping people in the setting safe and secure? Any thoughts, ladies?
Well, once again, you know, I'm thinking, like, I do have a concern, and I'm going to answer this now. I have an issue with normalizing the possibility of threat in settings with children, of normalizing it, that this is something they should always be, you know, where they're basically looking in the shadows all the time. And saying that I have no problem with a common sense approach to general threat, but not creating fear where you know, not fear mongering.
So normalizing threat is in itself harmful.
Yes.
Things like that. Yeah. I mean, I do remember when my children were younger, we always used to have this thing. I have this thing of, you know, if you lock your doors, I live in the north of England, by the way, in a fairly rural community. So lots of people don't actually lock their doors in my town. That's true, is that? But if you lock your doors, say you lock your doors at night, I always used to make sure there was a key on a hook next to the door. You do it too in your house, Juliet. There's a key on the shelf next to the front door, so people can let themselves out if they need to. And that's a safety function, isn't it? And you teach the children that, and you say, if you ever need to get out, the key's here. And that's a safety thing. You know, we had a large window upstairs, and I always used to teach the children that if there was a fire downstairs or they had to escape out of the house and they couldn't go downstairs, that's the window to go to, you know, because you can drop down onto a roof that's not very far down. So that kind of general protective stuff.
Just having some kind of a plan, but more just so that to prevent fear.
Yes.
So to help children, to
Yes.
empower them. But if you do it in such a way that children are constantly worried because there's a threat, I mean, we've already got children having problems with anxiety about school and things like that, and then you want to do something like this.
Okay, so this next bit is about what they might do. So this is where they're talking about registration schemes. So it says here, one approach is for the government to take no action and maintain the current position, which is that parents take the decision on whether a setting is safe for their child, and settings make decisions on what safety measures are appropriate. Under this option, no new measures, regulations, or expectations would be introduced regarding safeguarding in settings, which is obviously my preferred option. It says it has the benefit of empowering the settings to make decisions that are proportionate for their setting, recognising that all settings are unique, and makes parents responsible for deciding whether a given setting is the right choice for their child. It avoids placing further burdens on the sector, which arguably might allow the sector to grow, and it also places no costs on government or providers. However, it potentially leaves some risks unaddressed. Now, this is the government's approach every time they go to try and regulate something that's not been regulated before. For example, them introducing a children not in school register. They're introducing it because there might be some things they haven't spotted. It's always their approach. There might be something we've not spotted. Therefore, we're going to introduce this massive bureaucratic burden to see if we can find the skeleton that we haven't yet found in the cupboard.
We already know the burdens don't actually stop those potentially leaving some risks unaddressed, because you can look at the disciplinaries for schools, you can look at the disciplinaries for many organisations that are regulated. So it doesn't stop the risks being addressed, that they're still left unaddressed because issues still happen. It's just there's a list to put the issue on now. So it doesn't actually solve anything other than there's a list.
Some time ago, Joe Merritt and I read through a lot of serious case reviews of children who'd come to harm. That we looked at all the ones in the NSPCC database where there was a report written about a child who come to harm, and it was tagged home education, because we wanted to see whether home education was risky, whether this indicated that home education was risky. And we had a look, and we found that all of the children, well, more than half of the children shouldn't have been tagged home education in the first place, but the ones that were definitely home educated at some point during their childhood, for all of them, were on at least 5 lists. They were known to at least 5 different sets of people and known to be at risk. So putting children on a list clearly does not solve the problem. So moving on. So here's the potential. So one of the things that we've noticed about this particular question, it says, if they were to take a registration and or regulation approach, which of the following would you most like to see introduced? They've got national mandatory registration with regulation, national mandatory without regulation, national voluntary registration with regulation. They don't have any voluntary local or national ones where they say without regulation. So one of
Well, they have none of the above.
Yeah. Or you can write something like local voluntary registration without regulation. Being on a register is sometimes dead useful if you want more people to come to your setting. Just saying. Do you have any additional comments about the registration and regulation policy approach? So, here
I am going to use this opportunity to say I hear more about safeguarding issues within school settings than I ever do about out of school settings.
Yeah, I think that's a valid response there. Definitely. Right. So we looked at this question here where it says, if the government were to take an engagement-based approach, which of the following would you most like to see introduced? And I said, if the government were to take an engagement-based approach, I'd fall off my chair. That's the answer I would put. But yeah, true engagement is not something that they really do. It's a bit like the children not in school registers implementation forums. You know, they say they're engaging, but they're not listening. They're not listening to anything that's
I
said.
just want to ask Michelle something. So, Michelle, you know, there is that when you are responding to these things and there's certain keywords that are picked up, what was the one was proportionate and what was
proportionate, reasonable.
mm.
They're the sort of things you want to have in there.
So
Things
yeah,
like it's
so
proportionate.
you know, with my additional comments in that previous one, I'm just saying I believe the current approach is proportionate and reasonable. I don't feel there need to be changes, also because there's current legislation to address where there are problems.
Yeah. If they were to take this approach, which of the following would you most like to see introduced? Support for existing accreditation and registration schemes, improving existing guidance, improving access to information through digital solution, none of the above or other.
I think improving access to information through a digital solution like website, I think that's fine.
I think that's fine too.
Yeah.
I think that's fine too.
I don't think we need to faff with the guidance. I've never found any guidance to be particularly useful, to be honest.
Yeah. Engagement. I mean, you might like to talk about what engagement really is, and you hope that they manage to actually engage rather than pretend. There's an opportunity to say that there. You know, actual engagement involves listening and acting upon what you hear, not hearing and ignoring.
It involves dialogue, doesn't it?
It does involve dialogue, and it involves compromise as well. You know, they have to listen. They have to not stick with their whatever approach they've decided is. I mean, you know, they just go la 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 when we go to these things. It's quite extraordinary. And again, if the government were to take an information-based approach, I would fall off my chair. Oh dear. In all seriousness, though, information-based meaning that they would be informing people. So I would be saying, you know, it would be nice if they could act on the information that they had got already.
But the other bit to notice in this bit you've just dropped down, there's a lot about school campaigns and using that and about inconsistent school implementation as a way of empowering children, as opposed to, you know, if they could do a family campaign to remind parents, remember, do your due diligence. And they can do children-friendly flyers that can be circulated. It doesn't have to rely on schools, particularly as everyone involved in this is out of school. They're all out of school settings. So why are they trying to use schools as their information mechanism when it's specifically about out of school settings?
So it would be really useful to mention that down here in this box and say that you know, it really, you know, you are forgetting that many children who attend out of school settings don't go to school at all. And the other thing is that we should be empowering families, not children. Again, driving the wedge between the children and their parents. What we should be doing is empowering parents to be good parents. Okay. Do you have any additional comments? Carry on. Currently, parents are responsible for the decision on whether a setting is safe. Do you think another body should have a role in setting or monitoring safeguarding measures? I mean, we'd all say we're happy with the current position in general because we don't want the change.
Well, I'm happy to also say happy with the current position, but I think parents should be made more aware of it. So I'm happy for them to make sure information is more accessible to parents.
Yeah, so this one here, this fourth one here. Of the following, what would be your preferred option for how government should help to improve safeguarding?
Well, I think you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Well, information-based approach, maybe.
Yeah, possibly this one, or other, and put, you know, empowering parents and encouraging parents, something like that.
Yeah, making materials available for parents to be able to empower their, you know, own families and children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm very into training parents. I mean, I'm a National Autistic Society Early Bird Plus and teen life trainer. And I do see how, I mean, it's not training like, you know, sitting in the classroom teaching stuff. It's much more workshoppy than that. But I do see how those kinds of environments are actually, oh my goodness me, the parents get so much from them, you know? That kind of stuff's really great, but it's got to be voluntary. All of it's got to be voluntary. Right, so considering the wide range, all with their unique considerations, are there any type that you think should be focused on as part of any future safeguarding reforms?
I think main source of children's education provision, such as
Yeah,
schools, colleges, nurseries, etc.
I agree. I think that is the source of many of your safeguarding issues out there with your children. You're more than 50% of home educated children new to home education in the last year or so have come out of school because it wasn't safe for them in one way or another.
Yeah, and I'm going to put that in the box.
Yeah. And safety includes keeping children mentally and emotionally healthy, which school does not currently do very often. If you want to know where that statistic has come from, Education Otherwise regularly survey new to home education families, and they publish their results in reports, so you can refer to them if you want to do that. That's established and factual. Has Educational Freedom done any research on anything like that, Michelle?
Not recently.
Okay, so the most up-to-date stuff's with Education and Otherwise, you know, I mean, shop around for information, but that is it's quite a nice type of statistic, and it's been given to the DfE several times as well over the years, over the last couple of years, so they know that that's the case. And then we're done.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I can put a link in this last one, because then I could share Jen Hodge's website with all the school stories on it.
That might be quite funny.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether it would. I'm going to try it. I'm going to see if it'll let me put a link in there. You know, click here to add your school story. You got all these children's school stories on the Doing Education Differently site. So let's see if it'll let me put it, because it says what evidence has informed your answer to the above question. See here, for example. It's in. Put a link in.
Oh, well done.
It does let a link go through.
There's another tip for you all then. Feel free to put some
Yeah, I
links
mean,
in.
we have to use every opportunity we can to kind of drive some of these points home, to be honest, because we're just trying to get them to listen. So so then you write your email address if you want a receipt and a link to the PDF copy, but you don't have to.
And
So
even
if you
if
want
you
to be
don't, you
anonymous,
can then
you can.
download a copy of your response afterwards. So even if you don't put your email in, it then gives you an option to download a copy of your response, so you
Yeah,
can
I'm
still
sure
have a copy of it.
I'm sure they know all my email addresses by now.
Right, that's it. So thank you folks for sticking with us for that period of time, and get your responses in. Don't forget it's the 21st. We've got 6 days from tonight.
Well, thanks to this, I'm done.
Very good, very good.
And you see, if you watch this video and you have the form in front of you while you watch the video, you can get it done too.
There you go. Okay.